And he grew up in a print shop, and he was in the noisy print shop in his youth, and he lost his hearing either from the measles or from just all the loud noise in the print shop. And he quit school about the 8th grade, and because he couldn't hear. In them days they had limited resources for the deaf people. Seeing his grandma's house when I remember going down there.
He grew up in American Fork, Utah, and had family there and in Payson, and sometimes stayed with his grandmother or aunts. His father owned the town newspaper, and they lived also in the building on the other side of it. And he had a ham radio station in American Fork when he was a boy, and that was something he was very interested in. And his sister was named Bessie, and she lived in Salt Lake later, and he only had one sister. My mother told one time they bought a big can of honey, and he was looking at it and it was open, and he said, "Oh, my dad printed this label. Look at that. That's from his shop in American Fork." And he was looking at it and reading it and turning it, and he dumped the honey.
Just before he met my mother, I think he lived with his dad in Salt Lake, and his mother lived elsewhere. I believe they were separated.
He lived with his father in Salt Lake City. He was working as a printer at that time. I guess he ate out a lot, because after they were married, he never wanted to go out to eat. He always wanted to stay home and eat what they had. Well, she was a very energetic person. She just tackled anything and got it done.
She grew up in Hunter and went to Cypress High School. And the teachers that she had at Cypress were her lifelong friends. Ann Pearson and those, they kept in touch with her whole life. And she had a lot of friends from high school. I believe it was at a dance. It was quite a romance, I guess. But they both wrote a book to each other in their courtship, and it was fancy lettered, but they were really neat and very well done. Old English and hand lettered, and we used to look at them as children. And he used to travel out to Hunter, Utah, where she lived, and visit with her.
They were married in 1934, and then their first son, Billy, was born in 1935.
Grandpa Lovelace and Sadie were able to purchase a house during Depression times. Times were really hard because Grandpa was very frugal with his money. He was a good planner, he was a good saver, and because of that they had money when other people didn't, and so they were able to purchase their home on Wilson Avenue, which was really a blessing because they lived there, you know, the rest of their lives.
Mills sewing, and she earned money that they bought the house on Wilson Avenue with. And they bought a house that was being repossessed, and they had to get the other people out before they could move in. And they'd go down there and they'd turn the power off and this and that. But the people were out on the front porch reading the paper. And he had improvements made to the house. He had a furnace put in and a chimney put on. And in those days, there wasn't all the inspection that there is nowadays. And they didn't do a very good job. It was supposed to be tile-lined chimney, and they put a few pieces of tile out the top and left the rest of them out. He wasn't there to watch them. And it was a good house. Us 4 kids grew up in it and had a lot of fun, and did a lot of things and made a lot of things. And this is the front porch that was bricked in. Then he made a door over on the other side and made that porch.
He was a great dad, and I was very happy to have him as my father and very proud of him. We have a movie of us with Dad when Myrene was born, and I was about 3 then. So that probably about the earliest I remember. And he was 10 as well. My mother was in the hospital. And he took us to the park and took us on a boat ride. And when they were first married, I guess he built a boat in the garage. And he had that for a while, but then after it had got on Great Salt Lake, it was too corroded and it wouldn't go, so that was discarded. But late, when I was a teenager, they got another boat, and we would go to Utah Lake and go boating and water skiing, and that was a fun phase when we all got to ride in the boat.
One year that I was in the soapbox derby, I was in there twice, and I come in first in my heat. There was 3 cars at a time, and I come in first because the other 2 were ahead and they crashed. I made a snowman. That's D all red. We put a hose up there and we made it so you could talk it on it, and the hose didn't come out. Sounded like the snowman was talking.
He got along really well with his parents. He loved them, and they were good to him. My husband, Bill, though, even if they would tell him things, you know, that he should do or whatever, he would listen to them. But if he felt that something would be better for him or for his family, he would do it.
But he was very, very gracious with my mother's parents, and we went there almost every week and visited with them and helped them, and he would never complain that he had to take us there.
Annie and Hans they lived, when I knew them, they had a house on 3500 South, which is now a Checker store, but it was a fancy, it was like these houses, and yeah, it was a neat house. Had a clothes chute and a telephone nook in the hall, but they never had a phone. It was well water, and Grandpa designed a extensive cooler in the basement where the water would run through a trough and out into a drain field, and that keep everything cool. It was his own idea of refrigeration in the early days. And then they bought a gas refrigerator. It was an Electrolux refrigerator that run on natural gas, and they had that for years and years and years. And we used to play down their basement and in their yard and go out there. And during World War II, the soldiers from Camp Kearns would march by on the road, and I'd go watch them. And you were supposed to give soldiers a ride to town when you past them, and so my folks used to do that. And they were good grandparents. They were very kind to us. And they had a lot of pioneer games, and everything was crossing the plains and pioneer stuff, because that's where they grew up. Is, even though they weren't pioneers, they was pretty close to being it. And they had a big family.